All right, there we see a briefing that just happened moments ago. There, Colonel Stephen Sellers of Albemarle County Police giving us details about where the human remains that they have just announced that they were discovered during a process where they were scouring a field today with some 200 volunteers. Earlier, Chief Tim Longo, a face that we have seen throughout the search here for the missing University of Virginia student Hannah Graham, and them finding the human remains. Are not associating any identity with what they have found. They're sending it to the chief medical officer. I want to go straight to Clint Van Zandt, MSNBC criminal analyst. Clint, you heard what was said. What do you make from what they said? There wasn't a lot of information necessarily.
No, it's not a lot of information, but it's unfortunately the conclusion that many people what was afraid was going to happen. They found human remains. As you rightfully say, they haven't identified those remains yet. They'll do that either by clothing, by personal belongings, and or by dental or DNA. So it's going to take a little while, but the authorities, when they look at the condition of the remains that they found, they may have a pretty good idea now whether that remains are male or female, and of course whether they may relate to Hannah Graham. It seems like it does, and as all of us recall, the previous case that is perhaps linked to this too, where another student was murdered and found in a remote location. This seems to be perhaps the same MO of the same killer. The authorities right now have to figure out if their current suspect is responsible for at least the two crimes he's been linked to by DNA. And of course, he was the last person, I'm referring to Jesse Matthew, was the last person we know of that was seen with Hannah Graham before she disappeared.
Clint, what is the next step as it goes, these remains, to the chief medical officer, and as that investigator looks into what they might be able to cull from the information? What do we expect on that side, and also timing?
Well, they've worked very hard in this investigation to date. I mean, there's been literally hundreds of volunteers, notwithstanding city, county, state, and federal authorities that have been involved in this investigation, trying to simply locate this young woman. We all hoped, obviously, that Hannah would have been found alive, but we know statistically in cases like this, we usually find the results are otherwise. So right now we're going to be looking for the autopsy results, but realize the crime scene, there are multiple crime scenes in a situation like this. The crime scenes include where the victim was taken, the means by which the victim was transported from where she was taken to where the body disposal site is, and one or more body disposal sites that could be apparent here. So it will almost be like a archaeological dig, right, with law enforcement looking for anything from footprints to cigarette butts to DNA that might link to the offender responsible for her death.
And for those just joining us here on MSNBC, again, the breaking news coming out of Virginia, where the police there have just announced that human remains have been found today as they were scouring a field there in the Charlottesville region. They've asked for more witness accounts, should they be out there, to provide perhaps more leads in what they found. This during the process, as they were trying to understand more about the case of the disappearance of the University of Virginia student Hannah Graham, gone September 13th. So we're looking at basically week 5 at the moment. It was that late evening, September 13th, where in the early hours of the morning, that 41 seconds of video that showed perhaps what may have led to her disappearance, and they were scouring that video for details about clues which might help them understand what has happened to her after 5 weeks have passed. And this is that video, 41 seconds again, from those surveillance cameras from several businesses so early in the morning. Clint Van Zandt, and what that led them to do was then arrest Jesse Matthew Jr. In this case. And then you're mentioning the other cases that resulted from that. And with all of that together then, Clint, and then these latest perhaps clues that they get, could this lead to them moving forward with the case against Jesse Matthew Jr.?
And it could logically do that. We know that authorities have indicated that they have linked Jesse Matthew to a rape and assault that took place in Northern Virginia in 2005. They've linked him to the kidnapping and murder of Morgan Harrington in 2009. His DNA has linked to both of those crimes, both of those women. And, law enforcement will be quick to note, too, that in the case of student Morgan Harrington, her body was disposed of in a field somewhere outside of Charlottesville. Should this, the location being described by authorities, it sounds like it's somewhat similar. And unfortunately, when we have killers, sometimes serial killers, as we may or may not be dealing with, their MO is many times the same. They look for the same type of victim. They're able to identify that victim and kind of cut them out of the herd. And unfortunately, if it leads to murder, they use the same type of body disposal site. So there'll be FBI profilers as well as Virginia State Police investigators and profilers will be looking at all aspects of these multiple crimes and realize that the authorities are looking at between 5 and 10 other disappearances and murders that have taken place over the last dozen years, as well as the 2 sexual assaults that Jesse Matthew was linked to at 2 different colleges. They'll be trying to put all of this together, create a timeline, see if they can link him to all of these crimes. And, of course, should these remains turn out to be those of the missing student, and he be the last one that has been seen with her, they'll be attempting to determine if he's responsible for both her disappearance as well as perhaps her death.
Clint, one of the things that may have led to this today in the minute that we've got left here is that there are 4 law enforcement agencies now working together, and they said they were putting a fresh set of eyes on this. What do you think they may have done differently at this stage?
Well, one of the things you do is you take all the cases that may or may not be linked to the same offender, and you get new investigators in. There's a tendency sometimes to overlook evidence and say, yeah, we thought about that. It always helps to have a fresh set of eyes and a fresh set of brains, really, to look at something like this. You don't want to miss anything.
Right.
And if there is, in fact, someone responsible for multiple deaths, you want to identify who this person is and be sure you've got him off the street.
MSNBC analyst, former FBI profiler, Clint Van Zandt, thank you so much again. The breaking news here, human remains found in the search for Hannah Graham. No identity as of yet. That will be determined perhaps after the autopsy, and information comes from that. Stay with us right here on MSNBC for the latest on this story and more. We now return you to regular programming.